Alright, in this video I'm going to be making the frames for the gate, and this gate is a pretty good size gate. Each section is 8 feet long, and so it's a 16-foot total opening for the gate. And these frames are a little bit overkill, I will admit. They're made out of 4x4s, and they're all notched together, and it's a pretty heavy duty gate, but I wanted to do something that would stay rigid and last a long time, and I also wanted to make a pretty cool gate. And I was able to, this gate is so strong, I was able to stand on the end of it and swing around. So it's kind of like having a jib crane as your gate, you know what I'm saying? Alright, so let's get to it. So I start out by cutting the pieces to length, and then I'm going to start notching them. Now, what I did was to cut the notches, I put a dado set on the saw, and originally I was just going to cut the notches out with the dado set. But that produced quite a bit of chips that were flinging into my face. So I realized that I needed to go with another method. And I wound up using the skill saw to cut a bunch of notches spaced out inside the main big notch. And then I went and I knocked off those tabs, and then I went and cleaned it up because it was pretty, messy surface after doing that. And I cleaned it up with the dado set on the saw and wound up with some nice clean notches that didn't fling too many chips in my face, which is always a good thing. So the design that I went with had 2 full-size notches in the bottom for strength, and I didn't need the bottom board to be flush, so that's why I had the overhang on the ends of the boards. And then the top board, I wanted it to be flush because I was going to be putting up trim board at the top there. So I cut the notch out so that the top board would be flush with the top. Alright, now that I got all those pieces cut and notched, I went ahead and just fitted it together dry without gluing it or screwing it together. And then I tested the strength of it by just lifting it up on the end. And as you can see, it didn't budge at all. It just moved right on up. So now what I need to do is to assemble this, and I went ahead and got some pipe clamps that'll hold everything together, and then some other clamps to squeeze it together in all the different directions. And I'm going to go ahead and wet all the surfaces that are going to be glued. That's because I'm going to be using Gorilla Glue, and Gorilla Glue is a pretty cool type of glue. So the way it works is it reacts with moisture to set up and cure, and then it'll actually expand a little bit into the cracks, and it'll actually fill, it'll do a little bit of void fill, but you don't really want it to do too much void fill. You mainly want that expansion to just expand into the wood. So after I wetted it and I applied the Gorilla Glue, I put the pieces together, clamped everything together, and I let it set up and cure. Then I screwed it together with some structural screws. And so this is going to be held together really well. It's going to be notched, so it naturally wants to be held together. It's going to be glued together with Gorilla Glue. And then it's going to be screwed together with structural screws. So should hold up pretty well. This is technically strong enough the way it is right now, but I wanted to add a little bit more strength to it. So I cut some braces. Sometimes when people are putting gates together, they just think of the brace as something that's going to be holding the corners together. And that's not the right way to be thinking about how to use your brace. So let's talk about the two different bracing methods and how to use them. There's compression bracing and tension bracing. When you're using compression bracing, which is what I'm using, you want the load to be pushing against the brace, and then have the brace pushing against what you want to be absorbing that load. So the bracing in that situation will be pointed downwards from the load into what's going to be bearing that load. Now the other bracing method is tension bracing. And in that situation, you want the load to be pulling against the brace. And that brace is typically a cable. And the brace then will be pulling against what is going to be bearing that load. So in that situation, the brace will be pointed upwards from where it is receiving the load. So in a cable brace, you're going to have it going upwards from the load to what's going to be receiving that load. And then in a compression brace, you're going to have the brace pointed downwards from the load into what is going to be absorbing that load. After I got the braces cut, I went ahead and notched them in as well. I didn't want to just screw them to the frame. I wanted to notch them in so they'll naturally want to stay where they're at and hold everything square and together. The braces will definitely help keep it from sagging over time, and having them notched in there will be really nice. Now it was quite a bit of work to get them notched in, and one thing that wound up happening is when I cut them on the saw wasn't perfectly square, so I wasn't able to notch them in there without having a little bit of gaps here and there, which is something I didn't realize until after I had done all the notching. But after I got them notched in there, I went ahead and applied the Gorilla Glue, and I also moistened the areas before I applied it, and then got them set in place. And I used some shim stock to fill in any of the gaps that I had to make it a nice rigid setup. And after I got that done, I screwed everything together and then let everything set and cure, and I cleaned everything up, and that gates were pretty much done, ready to be hung. And there they are. Pretty nice looking gate frames there. In the next video, I'll be putting up the siding and making it look all nice and pretty. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and take it easy.